Fine.
Super. For people who haven't been here before, we basically just sort of have a couple of rules. Try to be respectful because a lot of people have some very strange experiences they've had, and try to keep the sort of the stories down to maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so other people have a chance to speak. And if you don't want to be on camera, turn the camera off. Because you can come on without audio or video, and nobody will even know you're here. And I want to welcome everybody who's here. And maybe we can start off with somebody who hasn't basically spoken before, who wants to basically talk, because a lot of times we get going on a subject here, and some people may want to have talked for the last year and they haven't had a chance to say anything. So maybe we can start with that, with anybody who hasn't talked before wants to start. Okay, go ahead.
My name's Ward Weinheimer. I've never done this before. Matter of fact, I really haven't talked to many contactees or experiences or anything like that. My story is that back in 2012, my life was going really bad. I lost my father, my sister, my wife. I broke my back, lost my job. So, it was not a good time. And then all of a sudden, I started getting all these poltergeist experiences in my home with knocking, voices, things moving, things being thrown on the floor. So I thought, okay, I got a ghost. So I got an EMF meter. Nothing showed up on the EMF meter. And I tried getting stuff on my phone, camera, nothing. Basically, I got some weird stuff, but nothing really that showed anything. And then one day I happened to be perusing my videos on my phone, and I saw a thumbnail that I didn't recognize, and when I watched the video, it blew me away. It was a video of there's creatures in my room and a robot and just totally insane stuff. And that's the beginning of it. And since 2012, I have been getting tons and tons of evidence being put on my phone or me catching it. It's ridiculous. And I'm also being really suppressed because usually every time I try to get in touch with somebody, I never hear back. And this has been going on for years now. I'm so surprised that somebody actually got back to me here.
We have a couple of people, like Sherry Wild had a pretty traumatic experience. Maybe Sherry can sort of come in, because you've been through all this in terms of sort of your life being flipped upside down. Can I ask what do you interpret as going on? Do you see this as part of this bad run of luck that you're having, or do you think that you have a mission?
No. They actually sort of saved my life. Because things were down, and I was on my disability now, and so you really don't have much to look forward to. At least with now, I have all these. I don't know anything about them. I don't know who they are, why they picked me. But one thing, they called me Red Light. I don't know where that comes from, because red's not even my favorite color. So they also showed me that our reality is not real, and that consciousness is so important, and that don't worry that this is not the life you only have, and it keeps me interested. But I wish they would give, anytime they usually get in touch with me, it's cryptic, very cryptic, and I need to know more. Also, I would like some help, and I literally have thousands of videos and pictures of weird stuff going on and aliens, and I'd sure like to have some help going through all this stuff. I mean, a lot of the videos are like, an hour long, and then you only find something that's only 2 seconds in there. So,
well, I'll just make a quick comment, and then I'll just open it up to other people. You can private message Desta, who's on the sort of the moderator here, and we will set up a longer sort of interview where if you want to take over the screen, you can show some stuff, and we can basically show it to other people what you're going through. So you can have 45 minutes or an hour where you can describe what you're doing. The other thing
Right.
I'd like to just throw in, and I'll throw it open, is I just came back from having coffee, and I was reading a book called The Flip, and it's written by a guy from Rice University, Krippner, no, Kripal, Dr. Kripal, and The Flip is a book that he's written, and I've written a book called Inspired, and I've come to the sort of the same conclusion he comes to, is that he calls it the flip, that people go through some traumatic experience, and it suddenly opens this thing up. And you described the same thing, where you have this happen, all these bad things happening, and suddenly it sort of opens up a valve, and you sort of enter this other world. And he calls it the flip, and to me, I called it this sort of trauma event that a lot of people describe. Like 37% of all all experiencers have had near-death experiences, or they've had, these traumatic events that seem to open up this thing as if this was part of what they needed to do. So I'll just say that, and then I'll open it up to other people. I'm sure other people have comments as to what you can do.
I agree that they're here to help. They're here to help.
Yeah, there's lots of people here who will have questions and comments for you. Maybe not. Well, we'll set up an interview for you, and do you, okay, the beings that you have, like what in terms of
What kind?
Yeah.
Almost every time I get one on camera, it's different from the last time. And what's really interesting is that I was on Commander Cobra's show a few years back, and he asked me, did I ever get any grays? I said, tell you, no, I don't remember getting any grays. And wouldn't you know, the next day, that's all I got was grays in my mind, grays on the camera, grays everywhere. So it's so weird. They even came to the hospital. When I was in the hospital, I had a problem with my kidneys, and I went in the hospital, and they used my phone, and there's a blue light being that can be seen walking out of the room. And so, they're with me all the time, it seems, and I don't understand why. I truthfully don't I'm not special. I'm just a regular kind of guy, and I don't know why. And it used to be before, where my mother was living in Estero, Florida. All I had to do was think at nighttime. All I had to do was think about a UFO would show up, but it doesn't work anymore. So she moved, and I don't know if that's a big part of it, but I don't get that anymore.
May I ask?
I have that little being that's in Whitley Strieber, those little blue or guys with the cloaks,
Yeah.
I have one of them sitting on my bed with me. I have another being that looks, I don't know, it looks like between something and a dog. And let's see, and then there's a robot. And so to me, that shows that in the future, or wherever they find that biological beings are better than electronic or made beings, because they wouldn't show a robot and themselves. They would just show a bunch of them. You know what I'm saying? So they're saying that biology is better.
Jan, you had a question.
Sure, yeah, and it's Jan. It's Jan. I know it looks like Jan, but I had a question. When you said there was a video on your phone that you came across, and did I understand correctly? There was a video on your phone of a video of your room that you didn't
Correct.
film?
I don't know if I filmed it or not. It doesn't. It shows me.
1 second, Danielle. Hold on. Okay. I gotta make sure I'm muted.
Yeah, it shows me. It shows the room. It shows my bed. And the first thing you recognize is that, you can see all four corners of my bed, but the headboard is missing, and that's physically impossible. And then you see this weird thing on my bed, and the robot, and you see all these beings, and then towards the end of this all craziness going, the craziness lasts for 2 minutes, and then the video goes on for another half hour with nothing. It's all done. But in the first, about 2 minutes in, it shows me getting off my bed and then walking to the wall and then walking back and not knowing that, that this camera's or not aware that the camera's even on. The camera is put. It's like as this robot comes into the room, the camera gets squared up so you can see the robot perfectly, sort of. You know, the biggest problem is that it was shot on a terrible track phone back in, what was this, 2012, and it was really terrible. I have a better one now, and also the only light in the room is coming from a TV. So, but you can still make it everything. I've had this film expert look at it, and he says, yeah, there's no manipulation here. Everything is real. He says it's the most amazing thing he's ever seen. Because you see the creatures moving, you see the robot moving, everything.
Did you have a camera set up? How do you know it was filmed on that track phone or whatever you called it?
Well, it appeared on that phone, you know, in the video section.
Okay.
So that's the only way I can deduce that. I mean, they could have put it on the phone for something else. That's true. But I doubt
I understand. Oh, okay. Yeah. I understand. So this was like when you take a picture with a phone and then there's pictures in the phone. It wasn't like you were on YouTube and came across the video. It was actually.
No. It was actually, I perused my videos inside my phone, my gallery. Right. And I saw a thumbnail that said, what the hell is this? It looked like some kind of skeleton or something. And I was like, wait, I don't remember seeing this. And then when I played it, it just blew me away, literally blew me, because I had always thought that it was ghosts. I always believed in aliens because of the preponderance of evidence, but I always thought that happened to other people. And I thought that, you know, this was all the poltergeist stuff was going on was ghosts, because I did lose my father, my sister, and my wife. So I figured that, you know, it's ghost stuff. But when I saw that, boy, it answered a lot of questions, though, in my mind, because I literally, one time I even called 911 because I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah. It sounds like you got exactly what you needed, that you were confused about the experience, and that by getting the video, it was like a language that spoke to you, and it gave you the kind of proof that you needed to help better understand who was visiting you.
Yes. And it continues to this day. I keep on getting stuff on my camera that I don't recognize, and things in the video that, you know, unfortunately, I'm not a good video editor. And like sometimes there's things in the video that if you look at it with my eyes, I could see, like, you know, like in a scene that shows my living room, there's like a scene of a palm tree in there, but the palm tree is not supposed to be there. And things like that. That happens a lot.
Interesting. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did you see like body parts, like arms, legs, faces? Did you see what it looked like?
Which one? I mean, I'm not.
Any of them. Any of them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the one that was on the bed with me, sitting there, you know, they put me in some kind of trance. Usually I'm totally blacked out. I have no memory of them coming around. They are really good at it. But once in a while, something comes through. Like I remember the one being that was on my bed with me. I literally took my camera, was trying to get his face. And it was the kind of being that those blue little beings with the cloaks that was with the Streavers movie. And he was sitting, I was trying to get his face, but the face wouldn't come out. It was just, wouldn't come out. But I have a picture of the back of him because in the video, it shows me trying to get, it just looks like black. But then I hit a mirror, and you can see in the mirror, you can see me and that being sitting right on the bed with me. Most of my things that I have are video screenshots. Because it's sometimes I'll have a 15-minute long video, and the best part of it is only like 2 or 3 seconds.
Okay.
I have a question, Lee J. Are you done, Aria?
Go ahead, Greg.
Miss Jones, were you done?
Yes, for now.
Oh, okay. I'm always interested in what triggers these events, and seems like a lot of suffering, as Grant noted. Was it kind of a precursor for your ongoing experiences? Could you share, was the suffering something like on the order that really pierced your heart? I mean, it really got to you?
I was going through hell, but you know, I have a daughter, and so, you know, I never would think about killing myself or anything, because I could never do that to my family, you know. Although I've wanted to, because, you know, just things were going through hell, but, you know, I could never try to kill myself because of my family. And yeah, I was pretty down, and I felt like, you know, this is the end of my life. You know, I was still basically young when I went on disability. I was, let's see, 50 years old. So, you know, I was thinking, wow, I got the rest of my life, and this is it, you know? And so that's pretty depressing when you look at your life and say, well, there's nothing really much I can do. I'm on disability, so that means I really can't do anything or go anywhere. And at least when this came into my life, I didn't think of it at that time. The only thing I thought of when I first appeared was like, wow, 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 wow. And then as the years rolled by, since this happened in 2012, you know, I started thinking about things and putting things together, and I realized, yeah, they came in at the perfect time of my life where I really needed something. But I don't understand is why they continue to give me this evidence. It's like, it boggles my mind. And because what can I do with? I mean, I'm trying to get it out there, but you know, I feel obligated because they keep on giving it to me. I don't know what else they want me to do with it. They don't give me a sign like, hey, send this to Grant Cameron. You know, they don't do those kinds of things. So I don't know what they even do with all this stuff. And I do have, you can go see some of my videos on YouTube, but they are very blurry. YouTube has a thing of taking my good videos and making them blurry. So you can look at some of them. If you go to Ward Alien Video, that's two words, Ward and then Alien Video, and you go to YouTube, you can, I think the best you could go to is Must See Aliens playlist.
You could type it into the chat
Sometimes
box.
it'll come up that I don't have any content, and that's something else that they try to do. They say that I don't have any content. Just reload and try it again, because I do have content.
Okay, well, make sure you contact Desta. We'll do an extended interview where you can take over the screen and you can show the videos and we can go through it that way, and we'll see where it goes. Are you getting any messages, or do you do any meditation to try to interact with?
I don't. I have gotten like I got this message early back in 2013, saying that this long drawn out thing. It looked like it was in my handwriting. I showed it to my mother and my daughter. They said, "This looks like your handwriting." I said, "Yeah, it does." But it was this thing that I'm special, and that in 7 years, so this making it 2020, that something special was going to happen. And I keep that private to myself because I don't want that out there. But you know, I don't know if that. Who knows? I don't even know who these guys are. I don't know. Maybe they just did that so I would always have something to look forward to. I don't know. And like I had another picture with the word original on it. I don't know what that was supposed to mean. And like I said, they called me Red Light, and I don't know who that. They said, this is actually what they said. They said, Red Light, you are the first one. And I don't, first one what? First one they're going to kill? First one what? You know? So I don't know what, it's so cryptic.
Well, that's the part of the thing. We actually have two people on here that actually had books that were given to them, that where they, you know, open it up, and it's the same sort of thing where they didn't even realize that this was written, and it's sort of given to them. So maybe that's part of the thing, is they want you to figure it out, and they want you to go, and maybe today's your day where you get to finally get an audience where people can understand who you are and what might be happening.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping maybe that's what they meant by 2020. Maybe this is all right. So you're a little early, but Yeah, maybe that's what they meant. Who knows? You know, like I said, I've laid down on my bed and I put a big note next to me. Please tell me. Please don't make me black out. Please let me know what's going on. You know, but that never works.
Anybody got any suggestions what to do?
It's a journey. Suffer it. It's a
I
long.
wish.
No,
I wish
really,
I
it's
had
a
you,
long
sir.
journey. Suffer it out. I mean, that's where you're at. Be glad that you've been awakened.
Oh yeah, I do. I thank God all the time for everything that I have, and I thank God for them because, like I said, you know, my life, you know, is a lot better, you know, and most of my time is trying to figure out what the hell they mean by a lot of these things. And you know, that's good for me. You know, I'm an intelligent guy. I like to try to figure things out. So
I had
you
a
know,
question for you.
sure.
When you encounter these beings, how do you, what are your feelings and what do you see? And when they talk to you, how do you hear them exactly?
Okay, telepathically. And also, it's not like, and on the red light, you are the first one. That was on a video of mine, and I played it a couple times to make sure I heard it right. That red light, you are the first one, and it was done in like a Hollywood alien kind of voice, kind of mechanical and deep, and like, you know, I'm like, this is still early on, and I was like, is the government messing with me? Because this sounds like something really cliche that they would put on here. And then when I went to go have my daughter listen to it after listening to it a bunch of times, I said, here, listen to this. And it was gone. The video was still there, but the voice had been taken off of it. And that's another thing that happens to me a lot. Sometimes they'll show me some really, really outrageous, cool stuff. And then when I go back, it's either the video is gone or they've changed the video a little bit. Now, I don't understand because most of the time they let me keep all this stuff, but sometimes they take it back. I just don't know. It's just, why are they it's almost seems like there's two different factions working against each other. I mean, like one faction will get me have this stuff, and there's another faction that comes around and makes sure I don't get it out. I don't know.
And when you
And
have
What does
these
red light remind
experiences,
you of?
I'm
What
sorry.
does red light remind you of?
Nothing. My daughter said maybe you're an alien prostitute.
Well, there you go. So it reminds you of, like it did me, and maybe a lot of us here, the red light district. You know,
That's right. Yeah.
you're somebody's prostitute.
I don't know. That's what, you know, I could figure it out. I know my father's red. His favorite color is red, and I do see when they first started coming around, my homes, they would. It seemed like when things would turn like or sort of a reddish, orangish glow. That doesn't happen. It hasn't happened in years, but it seemed like that's what was happening at first.
Reddish,
Also,
orangish glow, you said?
yeah, it seemed like everything like turned, like, you know, you could see it was like, you know, it was like, it's hard to explain. It's just like instead of a white sun, it's like in the house, it seemed like it was a reddish orangish look. And
I've heard that before with experiencers.
yeah, and that stopped though. I haven't had that in so many years now. But and then also that's one of the reasons I thought maybe red light. Another thing I thought of was because I used to take this little miniature laser light and I used to point it up in the sky and play around with it. And then also a lot of the ships that I see have red lights on them, and like a lot of the times it's closer ones. There's a lot of red lights on them. So I don't know if maybe that's how I'm supposed to know it's for me or something. No, I don't know.
I had a really to LG in that I had everything in my life go sideways at the same time. So I got divorced. I sold my house. I had to move. I had to, you know, a house to an apartment and move myself. I ended up, I got to a point where it's like my whole life was completely upside down and I was considering quitting my job. So I'm in the shower in the morning, and I had done all of my tools, tarot cards, pendulum, everything, saying, hey, do I need to go in and quit today? And I already knew the day, like they were honing in on what day I needed to go in and quit. I'm in the shower, and there's nobody in my house. It's just me and the cat. And I'm in the shower and I'm going, wow, should I really go in and resign today? I had my resignation written. And I had this giant booming James Earl Jones voice that said, trust us.
Mhm.
Now I have a lot of weird stuff happen in my life, but I still had to open the shower curtain and like look out to make sure that there wasn't anybody in my house. And and I went into work that day and I quit. And my boss kept saying, you can't quit. And I worked for a very prominent Fortune 100 financial services company, and there was stuff coming up there, and I wanted to get out before it all went in front of Congress and everything else. Anyway, so I quit. So I had the thought that I didn't want to go to work for the rest of the next 2 weeks. I gave my 2-week notice, but I'm like, I don't really want to drive out the next 2 weeks. Well, Saturday, a phone friend, and he was a prosecuting attorney for Los Angeles County, and he was going through his own turmoil and asked that I come be with him for the day. He had a relationship breakup and was in a really bad. So I said, yeah, I'll be there. So I showed up and I said, why don't we go see your horses? Because I know that, that would be, it'd be good for us to go see the horses. We went to stables. So it's a big stables in Burbank where there's a lot of people, a lot of horses and everything. We get the horses and he said, hey, jump on the back of my new horse. I said, sure. Just had a lead rope on it. So the horse so there's no saddle, just a lead rope. And I'm like, and I grew up with horses, had my own as a kid. So I thought, not a big deal. I jump on the back of this horse and this horse takes off on me. And so obviously the horse takes off. It was a roping horse. I didn't know it. Horse takes off. It veers right. I slide off. Do a spectacular roll. Break my wrist, the left one. Hematoma on the hip, and I've cut my chin.
Jeez.
Now here's where it gets interesting. So I've already gotten divorced, sold my house, moved, quit my job, and now really seriously, I break my wrist. So this is where things get really crazy. So James Earl Jones' voice in the shower Wednesday morning, Saturday. So somebody goes to grab the horse. My friend comes over to me and another person who was there, who was a friend of his, took the horse he had. And this cowboy walks out of the barn. Now there's like 3 barns, walks out of the barn, walks right up to me, squats down, has 2 small ice packs, an arm sling. And he looks at me and he says, he basically takes my hand, puts the ice packs on either side and the sling around it and ties it all up. And he just looks at me and he says, and goes, stands up, walks back to the barn and vanishes before he actually gets through the door, and everyone sees it. Okay, so there are no ice pack vending machines or sling machines in the barn, right? So hello, who was this? So everybody's standing there going, did you just see that? Did you? To this day. So I go to the hospital, ended up having 2 surgeries to get the arm repaired, and spent the next year in physical therapy 3 times a week getting my arm thing. I have a titanium plate and 10 screws in here. And after the first surgery, people would come over to my house and see me. They kept saying, my God, you look so amazing. You look rested. You look incredible. So they're like, what happened to you? And so like, don't know, had surgery. what I kept saying to them was, okay, really, you guys, I did everything you wanted me to do. I got divorced. I sold my house. I moved. I quit my job. But did you seriously have to break my wrist? That was going a little far, you know? It was like, I seriously quit my job. So I had a similar upside down experience that you did where your life shifts and changes in a dramatic fashion. I think sometimes it's to get you back on track or to more focused on what you need to be focusing on next. And so the crazy thing is then, you know, I basically, I spent about a year just recuperating, working on myself. I had money in the bank, so it was one of these amazing things where I could really spend time focusing on myself, focusing on what I was about and what gifts I was going to offer. And then about 3 years later, I ended up having to go back to work, and I didn't want to because just doing what I was doing was great, but it wasn't paying the bill. So I went back to work, and I've been at this company for like 9.5 years now. But the weird thing is that from there, I know you keep asking why is this happening? Why is this occurring? And I got a download 2 years ago, and it was a big download as far as what it was I was supposed to be doing next. I sketched everything out. I wrote everything out, and then I just started working on things one by one. And I'm starting to finish up the project now, and I'm curious what's coming next. So I think these things happen. The moment I had was when I had believed I'd never had like a physical face-to-face experience on the earth plane with an alien, but now it was like, oh yeah, I did. The cowboy from the barn. You know, it's like, okay, was it an angel? Was it an alien? Well, are they the same? And or you know, was it a guide? Well, the paranormal is the paranormal. Bottom line is that it's all one and the same. So, but the Jones voice in my shower, it didn't say trust me. The voice said trust us. And so it's always fascinating to see how these things come around and then how line up. And when you look back, it all makes sense, but it never makes sense as you're going in it and going through it. And so my biggest challenge has always been trust. It's like, oh, you know, so the trust stuff was, so the messages do mean things, and they may not make sense at the moment, but they always make sense later. And I think the whole thing is just keep moving forward and keep moving forward with what you're getting. And
Good advice. Good advice. Anybody got something else to add to that?
Well, I just when she was talking about the guy disappearing, I forgot that yeah, I've seen a lot of there's been people in my home that just disappeared, and also my mother she's never had anything happen to her in her whole life. She's 90 now, and at the same time that I started experiencing stuff, she did too. She was seeing these like greenish people at her bed that looks sort of like uh, Asian, but with green skin. And you know, and they were standing next to her bed, and that's happened a lot of times to her. And so, but I never got to see any of those. The people I've seen were just normal looking, regular people that vanished right in front of me.
Wow.
But you know, her having those kinds of experiences made me feel like, okay, at least somebody else is seeing. I'm not the only one. Even though with the pictures and videos, it still made me feel a lot better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of people on here who've got the videos. Doug has got videos, and same sort of, I think Doug would agree, same sort of, you have no idea what's going on or why you're seeing this or why these things are appearing.
Yeah, I wish I knew.
Hi, Grant.
Hello, Doug.
Yes, and hi, everyone. I've never been able to put any kind of common sense pattern to who gets to see these things and who doesn't, and who experiences them. and who doesn't. There's enough stories out there of people that are not at all tapped into any of what we would consider being tapped into, that are having experiences. And then there are people that are very deeply into this that will never have an experience in their life. So I don't know how to, see any kind of like equation to it. The only thing I could say is that I guess by the fact that I started watching the sky so diligently for a period of time, that my intent was there. And I think my intent is one of the things that I like to focus on. I was really intending on catching something, seeing something. If I looked long enough, I would. And when I was in that mode of thought, that's when I would see these things. And I've obviously recorded a lot of them and photographed a lot of them. And then when I got preoccupied with other things and I stopped looking in the sky, even when I would look in the sky, when I would remind myself to look up again and start looking, I would never see anything, because it's almost like it's hard to explain, but it's almost like my heart wasn't into it at that time, but prior it was. So that's the only thing I wanted to say at the moment about, the things that I see.
And yours is gone because you never know what's coming down the road. You're doing a a Broadway musical on this whole subject. So, and you would never have known that before as to how it fits in. The same as Sherry had the book and Nancy had a book who's on here, where you didn't know where it was going to start, but they sort of direct you slowly and you put the pieces together, and next thing you know, you're doing some sort of major project that you never would have believed you were going to do.
Yeah, in fact, I have a theater director that's now reading the 96 pages of my show. It's not done yet, but it's in the 3/4 of the way through. And I wrote him the other day. I don't care if I chase him away, but I told him I believe this is being channeled. I don't really understand half the time where it's coming from, because I sit down and it's almost like, and I think, Grant, I mentioned on your site that I'm listening to the Seth Speaks book on audiobook. It's like 20 hours long. It's amazing. But it's almost like that. It's like I'm not that far out of it. Like I could just be like washing the dishes or talking to somebody. But when I sit down and I'm ready to like start working on my show, or whether it's the music part of it or the writing, it seems to effortlessly come. But when the songs are done and I look back at them, like if I look back at some of the songs I wrote 6 months ago, I don't recognize them like how I wrote them, because I can't even play them. So I'd have to print the music back out, look at all the music and the chords and everything, and find my way through starting to relearn them again. But how did I come up with them in the first place has got me a little bit baffled. So I told this theater director, I think I'm channeling this, and hopefully he'll see that as some motivation to go and look into it deeper rather than run away. But yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. I hope to finish the dialogue part of it by early January.
You just reminded me of a story, Desta. We were having coffee yesterday. Maybe Desta could tell the story how they make her go back and re-edit stuff. And then the message she got was, we make you go back and re-edit it because even you haven't learned it yet. That sort of idea, that we make you keep reading it over so you pick up the message yourself.
Well, I mean, could be. I mean, I know I have to do a lot of rereading and a lot of and then I have to, the hardest thing for me will be that, like, it's my child. That's like bringing a child to term 9 months, and then you birth the child, and now the rest of the world is going to interact with the child by making comments or wanting to put a little blue outfit on it, or a red outfit on it, or this kind of hat, or these kind of booties, or whatever. I have to let that child go to the next level, which is the business world of the theater, going to have their say and going to, make suggestions so that I can the main goal is to get it up there. And as long as it remains what it is, the core of it remains what it is, I don't mind tweaking it a little bit here and there, but I want to keep it integral to the concept and the idea. And the original idea, Grant, I think I told you many years ago, when I started this, was I just sat up in the middle of the night in that hypnopompic or gogic state. I sat up in the middle of the night and I said the word hypnata, and I had never heard that word before. And I took note of it and wrote it down, and that's what I allowed later on. That's what guided me, and I allowed it to be the name of the show.
Yeah. That's your voice in the shower.
It wasn't actually, well, I always, every morning when I'm in the shower is when I kind of commune with my elders, in a sense. I kind of pray, I guess that's the best way to say it, as I talk to my mom and dad who passed on and anyone else I know, and then I do a little prayer to my elders about helping guide my day. But it was actually in bed when I said the word hypnota. It was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was just in between that sleep and awake state. And I sat up and I said the word, and that's when I forget if I recorded it or wrote it down, but I then looked at it the following day and started to, piece the show around just being let known that word. And so that's sort of the beginnings of it.
Yeah. When you look back, I think this was mentioned before, when you look back, it makes more sense, like in terms of you and I and our association with Chris Bledsoe, and you start putting all these pieces and you go like, wow, maybe that wasn't just an accident or random event.
Yeah, sort of. I always think about like jumping across a lake stone by stone. So you're trying to stay out of the water, and you're like, oh, there's another stone, and another stone just happened to, come up or whatever. And then you look back and you go, wow, that was like a crazy journey. It was all laid out in front of me, but I didn't realize it while I was in the process. So there's a lot of different ways of making an analogy to it, but sort of a matter of having faith and having some sort of faith in a greater purpose for every day, just trying to stay on track with what your inner message is or inner voice. And I don't think anyone can answer that except each individual. So, I don't know what it would mean if it doesn't get somewhere and it doesn't see the light of day. Maybe it was not meant to, or maybe it served a purpose in some other way, because we could never really know how we affect each other. We think the end result of something is going to be the thing we need, and yet it could be the journey that affects so many other people around us that's really substantial. So I'm just trying to follow through. I've been on it almost 3 years now, and it's hopefully going to be done in early 2020.
Wow.
And well, I'll just ask you one question
How
about.
do you earn a living?
Go ahead. Go again,
How do
Greg.
you how does Doug earn a living if it's taken him 10 years to make one production?
No,
How do you make a living?
That's not
Doug?
number one. Hello. That's number one. That's not 10 years. That's 3 years. Number one.
Oh, I thought you said 13.
No. 3 years. I've been on it almost 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years. And I'm in a moment of my life right now where all my ducks are in a row financially, that I don't have to worry about making a living. I have a short amount of time to do that, and I'm dedicating my time and my resources to that. I remained in my studio apartment, never moved out. Cars are paid off, mortgage is paid off. I'm in good shape for being a creative person.
Enough said, Doug. I was worried about you.
Okay.
Doug, let me ask you a question.
Grant,
People brought up the fact that there's this confusion as to where am I supposed to go, what am I supposed to do. You actually showed it to one of maybe the guy in the United States who's the top guy on this whole subject in intelligence, and you showed him your photographs. Let me ask you, do you think the government really knows, or are they just as mystified as everybody else as to what's going on?
Well, Grant, that's a great question. In fact, I talked to Ron yesterday via email about the not to sidetrack this, but about the Russian missiles that are hypersonic. I don't know if everybody knows about that. That they just sort of approved in Russia. Putin just kind of put the stamp of approval on the production or the release of a hypersonic missile that Ron had told me about 6 months ago. We have absolutely no defense to. He said, I don't care what anyone tells you, there's no defense to this. And I wrote him back yesterday and said, hey, did you hear that they released the hypersonic missile that they have? And he said, well, the Russians overestimate the Americans' ability to defend themselves. We have actually no real solution to any of their ballistic missiles, whether it's hypersonic or not. And this had me scratching my head, because Ron tends to always come up with this idea that rather than we're hiding so much great stuff from the world, he always comes up with this comment to me that we don't have what anybody even thinks we have. And I can't tell if that's a sophisticated game by him, or a purposeful way he's supposed to answer questions, or it's real. I don't know the difference. I really can't say. And when you're not privy to classified information, very secretive information, you have nothing to stand on except our observations and whistleblowers, right? I guess that's where that would come from. But I do know that Ron scratched his head quite a bit in looking at the images that I showed him, and he would be the type to say, "Oh, well, that's a balloon," or "You identified that. That's just a kite or a atmospheric effect." And he didn't do that with any of them. He was, kind of perplexed and just handed it back to me and said, "Those are great photos." And that's really pretty much all that he's said so far about those photos. But I don't know. I don't know if we know these
And
or
who's
not.
this Ron? What's Ron's
Ron
last
is,
name?
Dr. Ron Pandolfi.
Oh, Pendle. Oh, yeah.
He was
Yeah.
identified as I think one of the New York Times or somebody identified him as the top scientist in the CIA. That was 1996. And he's very much into UFOs, and nobody can figure out. And I think it's people like him that have sort of made me shift in the last year, where I sort of agree. I don't think we may have crafts, we may have bodies. I don't think we really know what this phenomenon is. I think that they're totally mystified. Even though they've got hardware, they don't know what's going on. The more I go along, the more I start to believe. I don't think it may be ET. I think it may be something much more complex than ET.
You know what else, Grant? One of the things that I remember seeing, and then it was taken down, but I do remember there was a video that Ron had posted, and it had to do with some sort of like makeshift drone out of like white cardboard and this and that. Like you could just throw it out of a moving car and track something. And it's like a really cheap drone. And he had posted this, and somebody wrote into him and said, "Hey, Ron, are we going to get more information about, the hidden stuff and this and that?" And Ron wrote back, we are only authorized for the usual obfuscation." So I always wondered why, if there was nothing, see, this is what I mean. If there is nothing, then what do you need to obfuscate? And I also said to him once, well, if there is nothing, then why is there so much classified? Why is it classified? If there's no secret to be kept and there's really no mystery to anything, then why is it classified? So these are always questions I have, Grant, and I'm always scratching my head as to what the reality
but then the same question would apply. Why would they not disclose the fact that they don't have any anything to stop Russian ballistic missiles? It's the ignorance that they're hiding, not so much anything that they have. Because people suddenly they believe that we have these guys who are protecting us and they're super guys and everything's under control. And that would sort of, whether it's UFOs or ballistic missiles, it sort of blows the cover in terms of like, we haven't got the foggiest notion what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that was an announcement by this country in and of itself about the ballistic missiles. That was just a personal observation Ron had to me. Now that's not an official statement by any means. It's just that he said, well, they overestimate what we can do. And I don't know if that's a purposeful thing to let out or something that's not consequential, or there's a motive to that. One of the things I noticed is that Nancy Tremaine would like to jump in on the conversation. I see her in the chat room. Maybe we could see what Nancy has to say.
Nancy has another book coming out, so go ahead, Nancy. Nancy from Michigan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to live a normal life in a world that I don't feel a part of. And when these strange things happen to me, I'm aware of how strange they are. But it's only in retrospect, weeks, months later, that I realize that these events that I go through have a much deeper meaning. And I'd like to share something that happened to me And I gave it, I named it, I called it Slipping the Loop, because it happened a week after I had spoken at the Buddhist monastery. And I knew nothing about Buddhism, but I had a wonderful experience. And I was shown the sunyata, and I became obsessed with the symbol of the sunyata. And I think what Jack Valet says, now this incident happened to me exactly 1 week to the day after I'd spoken at the Buddhist monastery. And I've never shared this publicly, so the date was August 19th, 2018. It was a Sunday afternoon and it was beautiful outside. And what I'm going to say is goes way beyond the mental boggle point. And this is a term that was coined by the late Jim Marrs. It is when even the most open-minded people are confronted with information that is so unbelievable that the mind succumbs to a rubber band effect, snapping back to beliefs that are more comfortable and socially acceptable. So here it goes. This is what happened to me. I watched as my forearms began materializing to wrists and then materializing to hands and fingers. And it seemed like I was being put back together. It was absolutely amazing. I watched these fuzzy particles of energy and molecules like jigsaw pieces and patterns assembling themselves until the structures of my forearms had materialized. And my hands were gripping my steering wheel of my car at the 10-2. I actually felt my soul energy slipping and returning into my body. And I compare it to putting your hand into a glove because that's exactly how it felt. I was actually witnessing my physical body returning. And I wondered, I actually looked down and to see my body. I actually looked down and I realized that I was driving my car, but I didn't know where I was. And I didn't know how I got in the car. I was aware that I was headed in a certain direction, but nothing was familiar to me, absolutely nothing. And I felt lost and disoriented. But it entered my mind for a second that I should pull over to the side of the road. And then I realized I'm a loner. I live all alone. I'm pretty much a recluse. And I thought, well, it isn't like there's anybody waiting for me. It's not like I have a life or somewhere to be. So I actually welcomed what was happening. I actually welcomed it. And I found humor. I found humor realizing that no one was going to miss me. So I surrendered to this extraordinary event. And I'd let my car just keep taking me in the direction it was headed. I wanted to see how long I would go. I equate the feelings to a dreamlike state, but I was wide awake. This was really happening to me. I passed houses I'd never seen and street names that were foreign. And I was actually excited, wondering where this was going to take me. It seemed to go on for miles. I mean, I felt an odd sensation as I recognized something familiar. The post office that is exactly 1 mile from my apartment. So I turned around in the parking lot and I drove back home. And what follows after that event gets stranger, and I won't go into that, but I will say that on September 12th, less than a month after I had what I termed slipped the loop, I received an email from a physicist in Mexico that Kevin Estrella had placed in my path. There are no accidents. I'm not an educated woman. I know nothing about physics, nothing. I didn't know why he wanted to connect with me. But I started up a relationship with this guy, and we're great friends. He's a genius. I told him about what happened and slipping the loop. And he told me that it was compatible with something that had happened to, I want to say, Paul Brunton was who I believe, a nuclear physicist who had I'm not positive it was Paul Brunton, but what had happened, he said it was compatible with something that had happened with this physicist many years prior. And he sent me the words that this physicist had written, and I just started crying because I couldn't believe it. It was real. Way, that's we
Okay.
must assume that behind this world of phenomenon exists a superior mind.
Let me ask you, Nancy, you're dealing with the reptilians, right?
Yes, I am. Mhm.
Is that the only group that you've dealt with?
I don't see them in physical form. I never see them in physical form now. All communication is done telepathically. They show me video. They show me.
Oh, Nancy's your audio is breaking up.
Oh,
Do you see it as a positive experience? You've been, it's 1962 this started, correct?
2011 is when when I awakened, and yes, I see it positive, very positive. And my relationship with these beings, the collective mind and the reptilians, is a positive, loving.
Which I should point out is completely contrary to what everybody else thinks. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. And let me say something about that. Dr. Carl Sagan states that the fossil record shows that the evolvement of mammals, particularly humans, was accomplished very quickly in a major burst of evolution. They're not alien to this planet or any planet. They have been watching over our evolution and studying our emotions for via the pineal gland. And Dr. John Mack recognized and worked with experiences that spoke out positively on the reptilians. And the stories of reptilians date back 240,000 years. They were thought to be gods, and they were feared by ancients and worshipped.
Yeah.
There's Nancy might be interested in this.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel comic books
Mm-hmm.
or Marvel Productions has a superhero that was initially called the Watchman, and he has since, I think, morphed into what is known as Dr. Manhattan.
Oh.
And the storyline, and the people that made the movies on Dr. Manhattan actually had a nuclear physicist as a consultant on their staff, so they could kind of try to get the physics right in what they were using as a storyline. But if you go online and look up Dr. Manhattan on Wikipedia or something like that,
I will.
You'll be amazed at how Dr. Manhattan came into being. Mirrors what I just heard you say about your body having been atomized and then reanimated, having been, in other words, dismembered down to the smallest possible particle of matter, and then have it remembered back into your body. It's like, I would say it's a metaphor for your subtle body development, your soul. It would be, because when Dr. Manhattan comes back, he was accidentally locked in a test chamber that was being used to remove the intrinsic field. And by that, the analogy to physics is that it removed the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, and the electromagnetic force. There was nothing available to hold matter together anymore, and it just kind of went away. But later, over time, he reassembled himself. But when he came back, he was no longer fully human. He was more a psychic being,
Yes.
a soul being, you see. But anyway, you might find it interesting. I just thought I'd share that.
Yes, and I think that this is how I was taken up into the ship
I
in
just
the
wanted to share that
one.
I've also
It was
had.
a molecular restructuring.
Dennis wanted to jump in with something, and then we'll go back to this. He's been waiting for a while to talk, so
Oh.
go ahead, Dennis.
Hello. So I just first time here, and it's actually Desta invite me, and it's very interesting story, cool story how we meet. But if I start in talk, it will be it take hours. So I have this say something to add to the what this Doug said about time and about how we get channeling. So they actually we channeling all the time. So we don't have our thoughts. So any thought is coming from the source, right? So we just tune in of different vibration of the thought. So another thing to get the highest level of the channeling on the thoughts, so you need to be in a high state, like kind of state of love, of high vibration. And it can be in meditative state or can be just what you love to do. For example, I love gardening, and when I surrounded the plants and do something, I get inspired, so cool stuff. And I say, wow, I can do this and I can do this. And, so we're all the time channel. It's not like a kind of some mystery stuff. You just get starting voice, and it's all the time. And another thing, because I came from Israel, and actually what happened, I've been studying a little bit Kabbalah and studying in Judaism and all this stuff, and I find out this actually the rabbis, they learn Kabbalah in the early morning. As the early morning, it's from 3:30 to like 5, 6. So they learn Kabbalah, and they actually telling this time when you get open to this knowledge. And I start research, and actually the ancient yogis actually do the same. They pray and meditate in this time. And actually the many gurus actually talking about this. And suddenly I find the video with David Wilcock who starting talking about and research about this. Actually, in this time, you kind of so you power, or you get this like voice talking or something. So the mystery is going to 4 times more, so 400% more if you meditate or do something work like in between this hour. So probably it's the best time, what I know, this go and do like write the book or something, or they do some like inspire stuff. Probably the best way is starting from 3:30 and go to the sick for a couple hours. And that's where it's like I'm actually more productive and easy to meditate and easy to do stuff and easy to write. And I am learning right now this channeling, this after writing channeling. It's actually the easiest way to do in the night. And what David Wilcock says is actually because in that time the planet is more close towards to the central sun, how I understand it. Maybe Grant can confirm this, I don't know, if you know about it, right? But
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's very, and it's what I want to add to the doc. And actually I have the couple experiences very weird is actually when I came to Canada. I came to Canada actually like 4 years ago. And I was strange because in Israel, if someone been there, it's actually very, very dense, and you just wants to eat, sleep, and work. That's all. It's just like a sleeping mode there. And I don't know if it's because there's a high energy or because someone doing something or something. So I just want to run away from it. And when I came to Canada, it was the biggest awakening, you know, because I have something thoughts in Israel, but it's something like, you know, something stopped me. So when I come here, the big awakening starts. So I have two things. When I'm being here alone, so I don't have a friend. So I cannot talk with someone about this spirituality and people starting like, you know, when you talk with something, they think like, oh, you're crazy or whatever, or I don't believe it and something. So I just started manifesting. Oh well, oh God, source, whatever. Just tell me the friends who I can talk. And suddenly I've been work, so nothing to do, no friends. So I just working and working. So just because I'm bored at home, so I going to work. So on the one day in the Friday, this most was busy day for me. So some of the Friday, and actually another thing what I acknowledge, my manifestation it take around 2 months, because I starting think what I starting putting out to the source is starting manifesting in the 2 months. Maybe something have different similar experience, and I want to confirm if someone knowledge the manifestation takes 2 months. It's very interesting.
Well, what kind of manifestation? How do you define that? Like what was happening?
So for example, I want to meet someone who, and actually I already forget about this, and it's 2 months, it person appears like, and I start talking what I actually wants to talk 2 months ago. And suddenly I got, wow, I thought about this 2 months ago. For example, I want to go to vacation, right? And I have that just now have money, and suddenly in 2 months somehow I get money and I get, oh, maybe you go to vacation, right? Or something like, for example, I'm starting manifest to, I want to meet the people who I can talk what I really want to talk, right? And the spirituality and the people on the same interest. So actually in 2 months, and I actually forget about this thought. On a Friday when I came like early night, like late night, I came and I checked the Facebook and I find out this actually, the group on the Facebook had it's called Vancouver Spiritual Community something. And I start, wow, I don't know this group. So actually my friend from Israel invited me to the group in Vancouver Spiritual Community before. So, and actually they have some, event and a Saturday morning. So it's like the next day. And I said, wow, I'm already late. And like, you know, it's like, I can sleep like only 3-4 hours. Should I go there? And it's like, no, I need to go. So when I go there, when I decided I go there, first for us, I need to change 2 buses to go to this place. So I go there and take one bus. Just imagine in front of me, in the empty bus, just in front of me, sit the guy with the big how they call it, flower of life on the neck, you know, this kind of pendulum or something, like, you know, this on the breast like this on the t-shirt. I said, wow, this is why a sign. This is on the right way. And I went, and when I need to change another bus, so I go to and have some line to this bus, and like I think 5 people in front of me. There was a girl who actually has a tattoo on the left shoulder. In front of my face, there was a flower of life. I was like, wow, it's interesting. I like 2 signs in a half hour, you know. It's like there's something. Oh, and I'm just getting excited. Oh, what is gonna be like? I'm getting excited. So I gone there, and actually I was excited. So there was event spread for the two levels. So the one level, it's like shops and like, these guys selling something, and the second is speakers. So wow, and I got the thing in my head. Wow, you need to find two things. Okay, so the two things. One thing I go, first I go to the speakers and I started looking everything. I just like, what you want to find it, and in front of me, big picture, the map of the universe. If something familiar with the Book of Knowledge,
yeah.
So I'm not in there, guys, because I'm not resident, but these guys bring me to the other community which I meet another people. So I just say, okay, why not? And I start talk and I meet with them. I actually buy the book, but I'm not very resonate with this book, but actually it's given me the permission to go to the another people. And when I see this, and when I find these people, I start talking to them and leave them my email. So I get the thought, yeah, I'm done here. So I go to the downstairs, and when there's a shop, and beautiful stores with the crystals and everything. I said, well, then I find another person, another thing. And I started to look, and before I started my journey from Drunvalla, everyone familiar with him, I guess so. And actually my thought is about the flowers of light. It's very connected with the Drunvalla because I know from the flower of life from him. So I started looking for what is the second thing. And someone called me and say, are you looking for something? And I say, yes. And she said, wow, I'm actually student from Drunvalla. And I said, oh my God, okay. And I started, and she's talking about, she has some like interesting teachings, and she wants to like on an all weekend. And it's like, and it's like, okay, why not? And after she said, oh, it will be cost like, I don't know, $300. And well, it's kind of expensive stuff, And she said, oh, your friend, if you have a friend, I give you the half price. I said, how you know? It's actually a friend from Israel need to come. And in the months when it's actually will be event, it's like, wow, again, cool. But okay, this event is cool, it's nice. But what happened, these different people in this event and different, or some people even didn't know. There was people, just understand, the people was realtors who just don't know about spirituality, nothing. They just came there, and I asked them, why you guys came here? It just, they're nothing is spirituality. It's like, oh, I just started drinking Kangen water, and it's something I get to voice in my head. I need to do spirituality. So wow. If those guys starting do like get to voice and just from drinking clean water, I said, wow, this is amazing. But the point of this meeting, actually, when we start meditate, the first what I saw the person with a beard, like, this kind of person with a beard, and I just, wow, it's interesting. And after 2 days, we're going to the last thing. After all the stuff, the last thing was kind of, we're going to meditate and going to astral traveling. So the astral traveling, this lady who teaches, she started talking, oh, let's go to astral traveling to Colorado. And I feel, I don't want to go to Colorado. And I got the voice, just go to sit on the floor, put your palms on the ground, and start breathing. And breathing is like you start breathing like more and more, like faster and faster. It's like you change the gears, you get more energy. When I started breathing more and more and more, it's like a pranayama. I finally see myself inside like the darkness, and from the darkness I see, the Coliseum in this, and they have a stairs, and the stairs they're sitting people, right? So, and I see like on the other side, I see the like kind of light being or something, and on the stairs, and I see, and it's kind of immediately by thought you can see you can control this picture or whatever. So I have more to see more, and you see the more stairs is going up, and after you see more being sitting there, and I said, wow, it's cool, because I actually I was connected to the mountain Shasta all the time, and I want to go to the Emerald Temple, I guess so. And you actually, you're not feeling how you're walking. It's like a missing frame. So you just missing frame. So you just, I want to get there, and you're immediately there. So it's not not walking. It's not experience walking. You're just there, and after you just, I want to see it, and you just feel already like in the back you have a seat, so you get seat, and when you sit, you have this kind of this violet light there, but it's kind of focal light, so it's like not very bright something, and it's connected to your third eye. And after I see there was a guy who in the middle there was a beard, and then I guess the later on I get there was like Saint Germain, and I start connecting. I see he is everywhere him, and it was interesting how I connect to him and starting like everything. I don't know if he guided me or something, but I was like all the time. If I've been researching in the Facebook, I see him, like it's amazing. And the second connection was 2 years ago. I sleep, I cannot sleep in the middle of the night, and actually something like, you're feeling like your body starting like squeezing or something, like you just feel the discomfort. And finally, when you lie down and relax and start in kind of meditative state, in a second, I saw the glowing guy with a jumpsuit, and it's like you cannot see all body. You see like from the bottom to the up, but not see the face. And it's a glowing blue costume, and I know, and I want to ask if someone very familiar with the glowing guy something, and just in a second, and it just gone. And I just so excited, like, wait, I want to talk with you. And it just immediately, you have the thought what he wants to. So it's kind of, he's not talking, and you just know what he wants to say. And he just give me the 5 things to do to meet him again. And it was 3, I guess, like 5 things, but some of them is very strange. And this one is like starting to do yoga, starting to do meditation, and find your breathing technology. So I find this 3, and that's what's interesting how to find them. But the 4th one, it was stay in Canada. I don't know why I'm staying in Canada, because it's interesting to go somewhere. And I said, no, stay in Canada. And the 5th, quit the job. And in the daytime, I was interested to go to the working in the restaurant. And he said, no, quit this job. I don't know why, but okay, why not? Right? Quit it.
Wow.
Yeah, this, and a lot of story like this. And it's like, wow, I actually very exciting to write the book as well. I like, I have this so many things to do with it. 2-3 years. It's like amazing.
Wow. Well, send Desta, so send this material, and we'll help you get your story out. The one thing you mentioned, which is kind of interesting, is you mentioned the instruction you're given, the 5 items that you're to do meditation and yoga. One of the things that people may not know is that a lot of the big experiences are followed around by government people. So Chris Bledsoe has a bunch of government people, because that's where I believe the government really doesn't know that much that you think they know. And so they're watching the experiencers. They're trying to figure out, they may even be watching this broadcast to see what the experiencers are talking about. They're trying to figure out what's going on as well. And so Chris Bledsoe is being watched. And the other 2 that are being watched are John Burroughs and Jim Peniston from the Rendlesham Forest incident. And one of the things that John Burroughs told me was after he gave his DNA. They're doing this DNA thing, whether the DNA is being influenced, and this section in the brain that they're looking at with experiencers. What he told John Burroughs was, I'd like you to do yoga and meditation. It's a specific type of yoga and a specific type of meditation. And I always wondered, like, what is that all about? And I did a book on contact modalities, which talks about this thing in the brain. If you do an action and a meditation at the same time, it shuts down. I think it's the parietal lobes. It'll shut them down. It sort of overwires the brain, and you go into this sort of samadhi experience. So it's kind of interesting. You got this same sort of structure.
I know this book. Yeah, I'm
Is
not
that-
really resonate with this book, but I'm not because my roommate actually the big fan of the my big toe. So it's like, I know. But another thing, when I mentioned this, it's actually how I find this meditation. I didn't know, because I didn't do meditation, I didn't do yoga, and I'm actually being 2 years service in the army, and I'm not like, oh, yoga is for girls and something like this. It's not my stuff, you know. I'm a tough guy, and like, no, this, and I actually there was I meet my like 4 years ago. I started to do the volunteering to organic farms in the BC in Vancouver. So this actually bring me to the idea to I started to do my diet is changed totally. So for 3-4 years, I'm came from the drink guy who drinks like almost every day and have a steak, to the raw vegan who doesn't drink and do meditate. It's like, and it's for 3 years. And if someone tell me 3 years ago, I gonna do this, and starting talk with the people and starting like become vegan and like, you know, this loving person, and it's like not drinking and everything, it's like a punch in the face. But right now it's like, wow, how it's totally different. And but what about how I find this, how I find in my type of yoga, meditation and breathing technology? Actually, when my girlfriend wants to back to the Germany, and we want to like farewell party, and we want to do some kind of barbecue, but we was tired, and it's just like, I don't know, I don't want to do barbecue. She said, I don't do neither. So she's actually get the text message from her friend. They say, oh, you need to go to this pub, this very nice pub there. It's like, okay, let's do it. And you know, every time you say yes, you know, why not? We go there, it's nice, like kind of middle, take it only cash, and it's like live music and everything. And I bring 2 of my friends actually there, and we're sitting and the big table, we listen music, and then one person come to us and start talking with us. Like, you know, this person looks like I don't know, it's like regular guy, like, you know, some little bit, like middle-aged guy who's like very nice, sit with us, and we 2 hours talk about the Russia, we talk about the Canada difference and Germany and all this stuff. After 2 hours, he said like, yeah, I need to go. And actually, when he just wants to go, he gave me the small, like, I don't know, the flyer, and the flyer was Kundalini Yoga.
That's what the CIA guy told Burroughs to do.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, it's actually cool. And it's like, I know. And actually, after this, I'm starting looking for this yoga, and everyone told me, oh, don't do it because it's too tough and everything. And I know why. It's like, well, okay, why not? You know, I'm always neutral, and I understand because I have different experience, and I understand this. Actually, I'm managing my reality, and everything. You know, all this stuff is a conspiracy. I've been conspiracy guy. I've been like for 2 years. I'm listening like all this stuff, and I think, oh, how bad these guys and everything and elite and. But actually, you know what I find I have. It's actually, we kind of in a game with biggest experience ever, and you know what is reconstruction for the when you want to do reconstruction, the World War II or the something like historical reconstruction on the war, you actually need to both sides. You need to someone for the biggest experience you want. Someone will be the Germany leader, and someone will be ally on the Russian or American, right? So, in this source, you see, wow, someone need to be in the dark side to understand, we have the experience of the light, because the light can be without dark and dark without light. So, and I see this like, wow, thank God those guys give me the biggest experience ever to take these adventures and do like, the dark stuff, right? And because this universe is neutral and it's without perspective, there's something control me. Okay, thank God, how exciting. My friends actually bring me this conspiracy. He's from Israel. And he's afraid everything. He not use the smartphone. He's not using the computer, and say, wow, someone called to my mom and say, we watch for you. Okay. But we're all consciousness, we're all one. So I'm not afraid of this. If they want to do it, okay. Because we're all one, we are the same the universe, the same God, so same consciousness. If the consciousness wants to experience this, okay. I'm not afraid of nothing, because I'm who are charged reality. And but thank for the knowledge about this. And actually after 2 years, actually only I got after 2 years from some friend actually meet this Kundalini teacher, and she is bringing to the teaching of Yogi Bhajan, and some familiar with him. And then I find this, wow, and I find this yoga, I find the meditation, and I find the breathing technology actually help me to manage my health, manage like to feel much better, and it's like to get more what I want to do, what I want to be. So it's amazing journey. I wonder it every time and every morning, and it's actually bring me to be in a high state and don't see this miserable people, how would say, right? But it's amazing. Like, I'm wondering every minute.
Okay. We want to go to Desta's give me a message here. Hang on. Somebody wants the yoga type. I will put the yoga type, the yoga and the meditation that the Kit Green advised to do, but I'll put that in the chat box.
Okay,
but
cool.
We wanted to share screen. Desta, give me the message again. I missed it.
With Aurora.
Aurora. So Aurora, take over the screen. You wanted to show some pictures?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to show the orb video that I talked about last week, and the still shots where it's doing some really weird stuff.
Okay.
Okay. So let me share the screen. Let me know if it's working.
Has started sharing screen. We haven't seen anything yet, but we can see you're sharing.
Can you see the?
We can see.
You see my screen?
I can see a screen. It looks like a bedroom shot.
It's actually my living room. It's going to be hard to see because there was only.
Here's the TV, yeah, and the computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the orb just went over the top of the TV and it's getting ready to come along.
Oh yeah, let me see this one.
Let me try it one more time. Maybe you can tell. It's really hard to see because it looks dark to me. You'll see it come over. Here we go. I'll just do a kind of a frame by frame. That's it right here.
Okay. Yeah.
See it kind of extended.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there it is right there.
Yeah.
It's going up the TV screen. You see it at the top?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it kind of goes behind the TV. but you can still kind of see it barely. Now it's getting ready to come out. There it comes. Now it's down here.
Mhm.
And it's coming along.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
And then it does its little weird dance. Okay, did you see where it did the little zigzag?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it shot up. Now, these are the still shots. You see where it's extended?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
hold on a
yeah.
second.
Are you filming this by accident or on purpose?
Well, I just filmed for no particular reason. Now here it is extended. This whole thing is that orb.
Yeah.
Now you see this blue light.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it turned into this, which I have a close-up of, which almost looks like a leg coming out of a cube, because there's like a cube right here.
Mhm.
And this is coming out, and then you see these, I don't know what they are, and they almost look like they have little claws on the end of them, like something coming out of this cube.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty wild.
you've got more than these. This is just one of your videos, right?
Yeah, this is the cube right here.
Okay.
I just tried to get it up close, but it's kind of hard to see because of what it was, but I don't know. I've never seen anything like this before.
I think, well, maybe someone else can speak. I think there's other people who have photographed these orbs. Well, Doug, you had some, but you shut your camera off. But I think there's, well, I have the one really good one. Maybe I'll show it next time, but I must have shown it. You must have seen it before with the guy in Winnipeg who gets cured of he has the cancer operation he's going in for. And this,
Yeah.
the blue orb gets bigger and bigger and bigger and goes into his body, and he's filming this. Very bizarre. What do you think?
I remember that, Grant. I remember you sending me that, and I actually have, and Nancy will know this. I actually watched. I mean, these are great, by the way. What I'm looking at, and I can see it. I followed it through, but Nancy can verify this. That Sukasan, the Buddhist teacher at the monastery that Nancy made contact with, I started going to his website and watching his Dharma talks. And in a couple of the Dharma talks, it is so unbelievably obvious. The little bright blue orbs that are flying in front of him, and in the room that they're in when he's giving the talk, he makes very little mention about them. And I wrote him and I said, Sukasan, do you see the little orbs? And he goes, oh yeah, every now and then they show up there like our little helpers. So he was kind of aware of them. But yeah, this phenomena happens. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I would imagine Chris Bledsoe has the best examples of these orbs, and where you actually can see inside them and make out, if you're willing to look at it that way, you can make out a dog or a person or this or that. But yeah, that's quite amazing.
Yeah, well, this thing was like expanding, like it was it was cloud-like in nature, and like you see this cube-shaped thing on the end that this is coming out of. It was like it did that a couple times, like in the other pictures, and then it was this, and it almost looked like a leg and a foot. But I've never seen anything like it, so I don't know if anyone's ever seen anything like this before. What's
amazing about that is you could be seeing something that's like, you know, we look at an orb as a tiny little thing, but it could be a universe within inside that orb. So you could be looking at, I do see what gives me the illusion of a kneecap and the thigh. And,
yeah, that's part of the orb. That's part of the orb. This whole thing is part of it. It has expanded dimensionally, and this is coming out of this cube-like structure. This thing had structure in it, and that's what made it so weird, and I'd never seen anything like it.
It does look like a foot. It does look like a foot with some claws on it. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating when you look. Once you see it like that, you really see it. And like I said, with Chris's orbs, you can see into them. And the one particular one, hey Grant, did you see the one that I drew the dog outline around?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
Chris told me, he goes, that's exactly what I was talking about, Doug. He said, that's exactly the design. And of all coincidences, if you want to call it that, that's the orb he saw over the grave where Nellie was buried, his dog. So that's crazy. I mean, this almost looks like it's stepping out of the orb and creating that image.
Yes,
but,
yes, the cube. And what's interesting about this, back in 2015, I had this vision of this cube, and I've got that here too. I don't know what it meant, but let me see if I can find it. I drew a picture of it, and this was on January 24th, 2015. I woke up at 3 a.m. and I had this vision. Now, I started having visions when I was about 6 years old, where things form in front of me like a hologram. I call it projected vision.
Okay.
And this happens to me not all the time, but it's happened throughout my life several times. And so I wrote the notes here. I was holding this cylinder in my hand, and this is the best I could draw of this cylinder. It had a hole in it. And I attached it to some device that was to my left, but I don't know what it was. I couldn't see it. And then the second vision, I was with two beings. I don't know who they were, looking at a small black cube placed in the center of an oblong table. That's what appeared before me. And I was instructing on what to do with the cube to these people. It was like the size of a dice. It was like a black cube.
Huh.
And then on the next day, I had another vision where the cube was going into the cylinder. This happened when I woke up that morning. And then it entered, I didn't know what it was. The cube was floating in this chamber. I didn't know what it was. That's why I said the cube, I put a question mark, like maybe it was some kind of anti-gravity chamber.
And how long ago was this?
This was back in 2015,
Okay.
January 24th and 25th of 2015.
Well, you know, Mecca has a black cube.
Desta has a black cube too. Desta can tell you about her black cube.
I don't think their black cube is this tiny. But anyway, I thought that was interesting because of the cube at the end of this extension of this orb. I don't know if you guys can even see it, but
Yep.
like a cube-like structure. And this projection coming out of it, almost like a hologram, because you can see through the leg. And here on this foot thing, where this kind of curves here, you can see it on the other side, you know, because the leg is transparent. It's not solid.
I'll give you one idea. I was just, go ahead, Greg.
Well, I was just going to comment. It looks like a three-toed creature coming out of there.
Well, yeah, that's what it looks like to me too. But I've never seen any creature like this, and
well, birds are
I don't know what it could be. I didn't know if anybody else had seen anything like it.
See, it could be a partial manifestation. There's a video I was just watching with Barbara Lamb, and she talks about these two young girls who would describe to their mother this like fairy dust sparkling, swirling and swirls in the room, and then it would go closer and closer together, and then the being would come out of it. And Ron Johnson is here. He can talk about the portal, how they came through his wall, or the idea with, I'm doing a lot of work with physical mediumship with people who've done this, and what you get there is the same sort of effect, that the ectoplasm will come out of the physical medium, and the object or the being will take form out of that ectoplasm, and it may only come in with one leg or with one arm or whatever, and it's almost like the being is in there, and you're seeing like a partial manifestation of the actual being that's using that orb to move around. And that's the same idea Chris Bledsoe will maintain, is that there are beings inside these orbs.
Okay, well, that's interesting to hear because I had never seen anything like this before, and it was first time. This happened last week.
Wow. Well, keep filming and keep recording and try to meditate and give them, you know, the information. Maybe Desta, you can quickly tell your little black cube story because it's kind of interesting. Just the beginning of it.
How do I unshare the screen now?
Go to the top and say stop share, I think.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Desta had a sort of a, you can just do the first part of your inspiration or your thing about the black cube, how the black cube starts. Because when she showed it, that's what first thing I thought about. Like, oh, Desta seen that thing.
Oh, okay, I want to hear this.
Well, I'll try and make it a short story, but it's I had a download, I guess, one morning, and it was a time before, like, the impression was it was supposed to be the beginning of time, the beginning of all time, when there was no people or languages or, you know, bodies or form or anything. And but there was a black cube, and I was a part of space, you know, a part of the infinite, and there wasn't anything except for the infinite. And it was like millions of years, all these points of consciousness that were us, like that we are all now. But at that time we were just parts of space, and we would like kind of be unaware of everything for what felt like millions of years, and then kind of wake up and be aware of what's going on. And what was going on when I was like, would be awakened once in a while, was that it was a black cube forming, and there was no other form. There was no language, like there were no people, there were no planets, there was nothing. It was supposed to be the time before time kind of thing. And there was a black cube forming, and I would like be aware, and in my head, not even in English, but it just, the perception of that there is a shape building, and I didn't even know what the shape was called because there was no language, but I was just like aware that it's this small thing that was a black cube. And I would sleep for another million years and wake up and be aware again, and the black cube was building. And but there was no feeling or, you know, personality of me, you know, the ego parts of people, that wasn't even, you know, hadn't even come around yet. But I kept waking up and seeing this black cube building, and eventually had the thought, like wondering what it was or what the black cube was referring to or whatever. And a voice came in that said, this is where separation begins. And the meaning to that was that all of the space, or, you know, what was there, which is now all us, which was a trillion zillion bits of consciousness, decided to like make the universe, or like make things happen, make matter for the first time ever. And as these bits of consciousness would wake up and realize that they wanted to start forming bits of matter, that's where the separation occurred, is that people didn't want to be part of the one anymore, like what we all were, just part of the cosmic, I don't know how to explain it, but part of the cosmic oneness. And as people, like as these bits of consciousness would wake up and realize they wanted to form something, and they wanted to get out of the one, they wanted to create the separateness, because that was the only way to start creating matter, which would eventually create planets and people and all this kind of stuff. And but the message was, this is where all wars come from. So meaning this is where the separation comes, is we were all part of this one vast infinite, you know, part. And then people started wanting to be separate, to express themselves, and to be a separate bit of the one. And somehow their consciousness then started forming into this black cube, which got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was just a gigantic black cube that eventually turned out to be the part of, you know, the very first matter that was supposed to be there, that eventually ended up, you know, being planets and stuff like that. But it was like, this is where all wars begin. And it's because it's the separateness. It's coming out of all of us, that we're coming out of the one for the first time ever, to try and experience life as each other, which is separate, which is what we perceive as being separate from the one. But we did all come from this original mass of oneness.
That's a great story, and reminds me of 2001: A Space Odyssey with the monolith. It reminds me of the monolith appearing in different stages and times on the different planets, and like sort of like enacting new changes and new stages of things. But it's amazing if you think about the idea that oneness, which we all want to get back to, seems like a place nobody wants to be. It's like, I don't want to be in the oneness thing. I want to go to the ego world and become a separate entity, so I can play and identify myself and identify my own accomplishments or my own whatever it is. And then when you're in that, you're like thinking, us all are having this discussion of the oneness, and how, like, where no wars and no ego and no betterment would be. And so I guess it's just a cycle that has to keep going. Maybe it's, you pick up something along the way as you recycle yourself on and on and on. But that was a great way of describing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the book of Revelation, they talk about the New Jerusalem, and it's described as a cube descending onto a hill in Jerusalem. And what it represents, though, is it's a union of all the opposites. So it's wholeness. It's all about wholeness. And really, in our time, that's the quest. We're too one-sided into the rational, and we need to include the paranormal that we're all talking about here today, and learn from that kind of knowing, and integrate it with our rational knowing, and then we'll be whole.
Well, I wanted to say something else about the orbs and maybe possible structures or dimensional properties of orbs, maybe, because they seem to be seen a lot now. I've never really had the experience. That's the first experience I've had with an orb that was really strange in what it did. But a lot of times you see these UFOs dropping these smaller orbs out of them. It's a process called dispersion. So if you want to be everywhere, let's say on a world, you disperse smaller pieces so that it can be everywhere. I take that back. I did see 2 small yellow-orange orbs around my fingers. This was several years ago too. Moving around my fingers. It was the strangest thing. And then they just disappeared. So these tinier orbs can gather all kinds of information. And that could be what's happening too. But Grant, you made a comment earlier that it may not be ET. What if it's not? Then what would you think that is?
Well, this came to, I get these sort of enlightenment things where I've been big into physical mediumship. I was actually, Desta and I were talking about this yesterday, that I was with Steve Mera, who's a guy who runs Phenomena magazine in Great Britain. I was with him, and he's spent, I don't know how much money he spent on the paranormal, but he's got huge collections of material, which he's never really talked about. I was in a hotel.
I've seen you interview him. He's fascinating.
Yeah, actually. And so I was with him in a hotel lobby, and I said, Steve, what's the best thing you got? And he said, direct voice phenomena. I had no idea what it was until maybe about a month ago. I realized how significant this was. There's a guy by the name of Leslie Flint, and you can find all his direct voice tapes on the internet. And I was listening to him, and one of the people that he had over 20 years that he was doing this direct voice. So you're in a seance scenario, and this voice is in the middle of the room. It's coming above people's heads, but it's in the middle of the room. And they would tie him down. They would put water in his mouth so he wasn't throwing his voice. They would put something to make sure he wasn't a microphone by his neck and stuff. And they could never prove that this guy was making these voices. But he's talking to Chopin. And then Chopin he's talking about what it's like to be in the next world. And he says, when we're in the etheric world here, you have the physical world, the etheric world, and then the spirit, which is higher than that. And the etheric world is just part of the physical world. And when we get here, that we don't use certain parts of our body. For example, nobody has sex anymore, so you lose your sexual organs, and people don't eat, so they lose their internal organs for digestion. And as he was saying this, I'm thinking to myself, that's describing aliens. Like so I started, and a number of the people that are on here, I asked them, I said, you had this alien your whole life. Did it ever get any older? No. Did it have any sex organs? No. And did it have a belly button? No. Did it have nipples? No. And then you're starting to think, like, if it was an ET from another planet that had found a portal and walked through the portal, it would still have those body parts. And all I was thinking is, what people are describing when they're talking about ETs is this same sort of thing. If it's in the etheric world with the ghosts and all, and the spirits and stuff like that, and if it manifests into the physical world, it can come into the physical world, it's not going to have those body parts. And that's what you see over and over again. And so one of the things Steve Mera did was they reproduced a lot of the skull experiments in Great Britain. And the guy who was with the skull experiment, Robin Foy was the main guy for the skull experiment. If you've ever seen this documentary, it's just fascinating stuff. And he moves to Spain, and they remake connection, and they're using this direct voice phenomena and seances, and they're having all this unbelievable stuff happening, physical manifestations in ports and stuff like that. And he said at one point, suddenly, they call him Blue, an ET comes into the room. They're talking to spirits for years and years. And suddenly this ET comes in, and he actually takes people's hands and he puts them on his head, and this ET's walking around the room, and people are actually touching this ET. And that sort of confirmed to me that this may be just some sort of phenomena that changes, because what you'll see if you go back to 1895, it was wooden ships. Then it was there was no ETs until 52. Then they said they were from Mars and Venus and the moon. Now they say they're from Zeta Reticuli and stuff like that. And it may just be as we change our worldview, they change what they're presenting, because before they used to be seen as spirits, leprechauns, this sort of thing. And that Jacques Vallée was on this many years ago, and I always thought he was crazy. And I'm starting to think, yeah, maybe if it's a phenomena that can come in and manifest in the physical world, they can become an orb and come into this world. Maybe they're living in that same world, almost like Bashar. We just had, what's the name, from Vancouver talking about it. And Bashar said that. Bashar said, and he's the famous alien channeler, he says, we come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world. And that's this whole idea. Where are these beings actually coming from? And if you have like a ball of light, like there's a description of beings coming in as a balls of light, and then you have Joseph Ronan, who's not on here today, but he's been on before, and he talks about how the beings leave. The beings all grab each other's hands, they go around in a circle, and they swirl in a circle, and the circle gets faster and faster and faster, and suddenly they turn into light, and the light goes into the middle, it turns into a ball of light, and it disappears. And so that's how they're coming into the world, through these orbs and stuff like that. And I had my first experience. You mentioned the fact that that orbs is a new thing. It absolutely is, because I had an experience, and I've told this story, I won't tell it today, but I was like within 50 feet of an object on the ground, which was maybe 3 feet across, and we used to call them ground lights. There was no description of orbs. This is 1976, and I was going to jump on the thing. I had 3 close encounters with it. The third time I was going to jump on it, we filmed the thing with an 8mm movie camera, and I remember going to the Canadian government guy that I knew, and he said, "Oh, you mean monitors?" And I said, yeah, monitors, because we didn't even have the term for it. Now we call them orbs. Everybody talks about these orbs moving around bedrooms and stuff. So I think orbs are a new thing. This was not happening when I had my first experiences in 75, 76. It's like the phenomena is changing as we change. And because you have like cattle mutilations really don't happen anymore. Ground traces don't happen anymore. Crop circles didn't happen in the 70s. They only started. And it's almost like they're changing the phenomena as we go along to teach us.
They get smaller and smaller. So if you have a dispersion theory where, you know, these beings want to be everywhere and be watching, they don't want to be seen. Yeah. So you take the larger craft and drop the smaller ones, and then maybe smaller ones drop from those. It's light technology, I think. And,
that's what we used to think in the 70s. We thought they were just dropping. The big ones flew around in 75. We saw the big ones. And then in 76, we're waiting for the big ones to fly by, and we suddenly saw these things on the ground. That's the idea we got, is that they put these little ones down. But as you can see, they can come in your bedroom. They can move around. And they have this unbelievable ability to be like the size of a dime, where they're moving around. And
yeah,
stuff like
yeah. I had one the size of like a pencil eraser top. moving around my fingers, the two I was telling you about. But yeah, and now with these pictures I got, the way this thing was morphing and the leg coming out of the cube, it's almost like there's dimensional properties within these orbs.
You know, Grant, what about Foo Fighters? Because we're talking about these orb objects, and wasn't that what they were seeing in the Foo Fighters during war and so on?
Yeah, but you got to remember what the Foo Fighters, how long were the Foo Fighters around? I remember my father was a Royal Canadian Air Force. His boss saw a Foo Fighter during World War II, but they were around. That's one of the patterns is they were Foo Fighters. They were flying around, and then the Foo Fighters went away. The last Foo Fighter sighting was like 1945. Then they turned into the green fireballs, and the green fireballs were around all the military nuclear tests in the 1940s. Then the green fireballs went away, and then suddenly you had the big objects, and then they would start at night. There was no alien sightings till November of 1952 when detonated the hydrogen bomb. So then suddenly, Adamski and Williamson, a couple days after the detonation of the hydrogen bomb, suddenly we got aliens, and it's like this thing is progressing. And that's why that's one of the points I make is what happened to the Foo Fighters? I mean, it's like they're on another planet 100 years behind us doing the same thing. And after they send the Foo Fighters on that planet, then they're going to send in the green fireballs. Then they're going to send in the Adamski people, and it's going to go on. It's almost like they've done this on 1,000 planets before, and they go through this cycle to awaken us.
Well, are we talking about?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, are we talking about a purposeful change of appearance through time, or are they different entities that are just visiting and coming in and leaving and visiting and so on? In other words, you're sort of describing it as if it's one intelligence or one entity that presents itself in a different way as time goes on. And I'm just wondering if it's just a variety, like, there's so much life in the universe and so many different forms of it.
Oh yeah, there's billions of planets out there. It could be multiple visitors.
Okay, let me give you an example. Then I want Ron Johnson to jump in. Ron Johnson actually got a message about this. When my father died, I tell the story. Just before my father died, a day before, 2 days before, his father came to see him. My father died. My grandfather died in 1956. So he came in there. So the question is, if reincarnation is a fact, my grandfather has lived 1,000 different lives. Why did he come in looking like my grandfather? Because if he came as any of the other 1,000 people that he had been, my father wouldn't have known who he was. He came to my father as his father because that would be comforting. If he came as anything else, my father wouldn't know what the hell was going on. But Ron, you actually had where they told you this idea, and Joseph Ronan has talked about this, that we are, or Sherry's on here. Sherry, you asked Daw about, are you actually an alien? And he basically said, no, this idea that they project whatever you need to see. And Ron, I think specifically they told him this, that what you see is what you are projecting. You got to realize you're part of the thing. It's not an independent thing outside yourself. You are part of the experience you're having.
Well, that's interesting. Did you guys see the same thing in that picture that I saw?
Yeah, but
so
that's
we're
the thing.
All having the same thing happen then.
Yeah, Ron, can you jump in on this? Are you there?
But Grant, you're right. The phenomena, we are a part of it.
Yeah.
And Carl Jung in 1958 wrote a book about flying saucers, and he pretty much nailed the meaning of the phenomena. And the reason the phenomena is so manifest in our time is because the humanity is not living consciously enough, and they're about to destroy this planet. Because of it. And so these orbs or whatever manifestations, I never see orbs. I haven't never seen a UFO. I've seen them in the inner world, but Jung's idea was that these orbs are a part of your soul, some unintegrated aspect of your own consciousness that you have yet to integrate. And once you integrate and consciously understand what you have integrated, the phenomena will disappear from your presence. You won't see it anymore because there's no need for it. You're engaging it in a meaningful way. Now, that may be disheartening to those who love the phenomena and feed off of it as the paranormal and signs and wonders, but eventually you know, we all got to grow up and get the message that this is serious stuff. And we all have a chance to help save the planet by integrating and becoming more conscious of ourselves and our limitations and what we need to become aware of. So I would just like to throw that out there, because I totally agree with your comment, Grant. We are a part of the phenomena. We are conjuring this stuff up, whether we like it or not, and it ain't going to go away.
Yeah.
We are the change of the equinoxes. You know, we're going from Pisces into Aquarius, and all this hovers a change in psychic dominance. And to be a part of that, we have to grow up. We have to get off the pablum and get on some solid food.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, I don't know exactly what you mean by save the planet, because the planet is not going anywhere. I mean,
well,
life,
save life on the planet, save humanity. You know?
There's life on this planet in so many diverse ways, from temperatures of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit to freezing cold. There's life on this planet, and we will continually morph and adapt. So is it specifically, I guess what you're talking about is specifically human being life on this planet. Maybe it will go through population changes and this and that, but I'm less of a person that's concerned about, with all this concern about every little straw and piece of plastic is gonna eliminate us.
But Doug, let me remind
you brought up the Russian hypersonic missiles. I mean, let's start there, and it's only going to get worse. You know, if we don't turn this around in our consciousness, you don't think the industrial complex in the United States is going to sit on its hands while Russia and China try to weaponize space?
But Greg, if we are eternal beings, and that we just return to our spirit form, and that we're all going to pass on and die here, what's the difference whether life on this planet exists or not?
I don't want to pontificate on that. I'll leave that to the creator of the universe to decide what should survive or not survive. But if the creator of the universe is saying, we need to integrate more consciousness, I think we all each better take that seriously and get cracking.
Well, I don't know if the creator of the universe is saying that. I haven't heard the creator of the universe give us a doctrine or say we better get cracking on this or that or anything else. Maybe all of what
the Russian UFOs, that means you ought to get cracking. That's what I'm saying. If you're seeing orbs and UFOs and you're fascinated with that phenomena, then you've been chosen to make a difference.
Well, hey, nobody's cracking more than me, Greg. I can tell you that. Nobody's cracking more than me. I'm doing a lot of work.
Let me
cracking, man.
Nobody's chosen.
We need the effort. We need the help.
Let me add two things. The fact that 39% of all experiencers who've been on board the ship say they've seen the screen. You don't have to explain what the screen is. It's this environmental sort of devastation or whatever. And the idea that not only do we affect this planet if we take this thing out, we're going to affect the rest of the universe. We think we're separate from everything else, that it affects everybody else. But I'll bring up a point. Ron Pandolfi, if you see, there's an interview with Jack Sarfati and Dan Smith in San Francisco. It's about 10 years ago. And at one point, Dan Smith says, Ron said there's going to be a 90% die-off. And if you remember, Doug, we had the go-to meeting, and I said, did Ron Pandolfi say there was going to be a 90% die-off? It was dead silence. And the princess said, why should the animals be only ones to die? And so Ron and that's what his whole life is. It's the Kashmir Foundation. It's this trying to save the environmental devastation to the animals, not just to the human beings. And you know how serious he is about that kind of stuff. But there were some of the rumors.
Well, Grant, I totally, in other words, I'm not, no matter what someone may glean out of my attitude or words I say, I live in a completely green manner of recycling, taking care of things. I do. On a personal level, I do. I just can't answer for the bigger picture. I don't know. Now, I conserve. I never kill anything. I don't want to kill anything. If I can, and I can catch a bee in the house and let them them out, I do. Or even a mosquito, I'll get them out of the house instead of squashing them. But I mean, we walk out the door, and
I
under
hate
our
to
feet
say
are
this, but
ants.
I kill stuff.
Oh no.
Yeah.
If a spider comes
So
crawling out, he's dead.
yeah, well, all right. So because bottom line is, I watched a video the other night off of Project Avalon, which I belong to, about the fact that they hooked up a lie detector test. I think it's the Baxter equation or something, or factor, the Baxter factor. It's a great video to get. And this is a guy that worked with the CIA, and he used to do lie detector tests. So he hooked up his lie detector to a plant in his house one night. And he started to realize that his plant is reacting to things in his environment. So what he ended up doing, he did this really great test. He removed himself from the situation. He hooked up the plant to a lie detector test. He took some brine shrimp in a little cup, and he was boiling water, and he had a motor machine based on a clock that would turn that cup upside down and drop those brine shrimp into the boiling water and kill them. But he wanted to remove himself from the situation. So he set up his cameras, he started the event, he left the room, and he was gone for like a half hour, and he had it all recorded and documented that the second those brine shrimp were turned upside down and they fell into the boiling water and died, the plant went into a panic on the lie detector test. That means the plant sensed the death of the brine shrimp in the room next door and had a very, very adverse effect. So what I'm basically trying to say is this: when you lay on the grass, when you cut flowers to give to a friend, every time you step on a little ant or a bug or a thing you didn't even know about, whether intent or not, we are all living in an environment where we are taking smaller things' lives. Whether you are a vegetarian, whether you're a meat eater, whether you are as peaceful or violent, you can't help it, because that's the 3D environment we live in.
Well, Grant, to support your story there about Puthoff, Carl Jung on his deathbed in 1961, June, had a dream in which he saw 2/3 of the planet destroyed. But his comment was at the end of the dream to the person recording it was, "Thank God it wasn't the whole planet." So I hope it hasn't gone from 2/3 to 90%, but no, there's that consistent warning from important people and ordinary people that we're in trouble here. And I think meditating and paying attention to what you see within and keeping a good record and trying to consciously understand what you're experiencing and seeing and look at it all symbolically, don't take it literally, will help save the planet. That's what I think.
Yeah, that would lead to the question that people maybe can answer is, why do you think this thing started in 1947? Why are the beings here?
Who said it started in 47? Maybe it started before 47.
Okay, but why, even if it did, why are they here? Like, what's this all about? Why are we experiencing this whole thing? Is it just a random phenomena, or did they come here for a specific reason?
You know what?
Well, I think it was the atomic bomb that we dared to use the strong nuclear force that the Creator empowered in nature and use it against nature. I think is a black mass. That's what Wolfgang Pauli thought of it. And I think it's going to have devastating effects, that the matter is going to come back against us, either in hypersonic missiles or whatever else. But in the meantime, if you want to know this is my opinion, if you want to know how to save the planet, you want to be a part of that, take your meditations and your inner life really seriously and try to understand what it means consciously, and that's the help. But right now we're at a critical juncture, I think, and that's why the manifestations are ever increasing. They've been going on for over 70 years. Nobody seems to understand them, but nevertheless, they keep getting more bizarre, like Grant, with the airports and whatever else is going on. We don't even know of.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, sometimes I think about the animals and the things that we do to animals, like when we tranquilize them and tag them to follow their migration patterns, and or rats that we do experiments with to, you know, further our own knowledge. We use the lower species. So, you know, we may just be that. We may be some lower species, and they're just doing stuff and exploring this world and using it for their own stuff. I don't know. I mean, what does an animal do when he wakes up after being tranquilized? I mean, sometimes I wonder, what did that animal think? What if he told his friends, you know, something happened to me and I lost
think
time?
To answer your
I don't
question,
know what they did.
I think it's to wake the planet up, you know, just to get everyone thinking on a higher level and to get everyone thinking together. Because it's not just the person who has the experience, because if you have an experience, say, you know, I've got, you know, Destis, I've got, you know, video orbs or whatever in my house, and I've got pictures of faces and whatnot, but when you raise your consciousness and you go out into an environment, out into the world, you can help raise other people's consciousness just by them being in close proximity to you. And I think that is part of this program, and it is a program that's taking place. And it's not so much that you go out and you say, hey, look what I caught on my camera. It's the way that you carry yourself, the way that you interact with other people. And people, you know, it's like, you know, not that people want to hang around me per se, but, you know, like if I go out and I park in a parking lot far away from the front door of, you know, Best Buy, and I'll park far away so I, you know, don't park near anyone. I'll walk back outside and there's like, you know, 3 or 4 cars like parked right beside me, and the entire parking lot's wide open, you know? And it's kind of something like that where you're helping to raise people's consciousness as well. Just with little interactions. You know,
Hey, Philip?
whether it's holding the door open for someone or whatnot.
Yeah.
So.
I would agree with that, Philip. I would say that crossing the millennial threshold, as we did, to me, symbolizes in our time-oriented existence here in 3D, this crossing into a new paradigm of consciousness. And that's why now, because we are shifting into this new paradigm, where we are becoming more aware of higher consciousness and our interconnectedness. So I think it's an inside job, just like you're saying, Gregory, in terms of we have to each do our part, because it has to do with the interconnectedness. You know, it's the ripple effect. Everything that each of us does affects the whole. So that's why one person can make a big difference, because of that ripple effect.
I second the motion on that.
I want to add something. So they were talking about this, and as Bashar said, it's actually we're just shifting from one part of to another, and the earth wants to the shift already exists, and we just need to stay in tune whatever is happening around you. Even everything ruins, but you still keep in your mind and going there. For example, I have this I like to do the recycle and all this stuff with the garbage and separate all this stuff. And
I can't make you out.
Huh?
You're breaking up, or is it just me?
Sorry. Continue, yeah. So I just like realized about the garbage and all this stuff that actually we're not recycling nothing here. And I have this, suddenly I find a roommate who actually work in the trash industry, and it's like, wow, they not do nothing. They actually not recycling. They just put on the field, that's all. And I start thinking, why I'm doing this recycle and everything? And if it's nothing work, but you know what? I want to do it recycle. I want to change my reality when they does recycle. They care about reality. They care about the earth. So I just do whatever I think is right, whatever it will be, even everything's ruins about me, and tell this, no, you just do for nothing. This is, and what about the free will, about the people? What some people wants to experience some darkness, and what the people experience some death and like, you know, suffering and everything. Or we just wants to take our ego and start to be, oh, I must save the people. No, we need to let the people what they want to experience, because we all have free will. And because it's not just a dark and light, it's neutral. We just, I think so. So that's my point, I guess so.
Right. Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I spent some time talking with discarnate beings in channeling, and they very much recommend that there are all sorts of possible alternate situations in which the planet could get into, but that essentially we need to focus on the ones that we want to happen. So this is very much echoing some of the things people are saying here. And Philip, I've heard it said to me also that if you stand next to somebody in a supermarket queue, you can affect their energy by just standing next to them. The area that I'm very interested in is I work in relationships, and I'm very aware that the way we communicate, how we talk with each other, is a bit problematic, and that it will be really more helpful if we could talk more emotionally in terms of vulnerable emotion, and speak to the relatedness and the bonding and connection that really fundamentally is a part of what human existence is about. It's about love. And it would make a difference to the quality of the conversations where we're just like trading points with each other and belief systems, and people aren't listening to each other or disagreeing. But I guess the basic thing I'm saying is there's something about focusing on what we do want. And maybe there are multiple ways this planet can go. And if we do focus and get together with groups and people who are focusing on basically an energy of love, but focusing specifically on an outcome for the planet that we do want, then maybe that's what's going to do it.
Thank you, Nick. I like everything you said there, and I want to say that, you know, we said the last time we were talking about sensitivity being part of experiencers in terms of coming in wired more sensitive, being more sensitive. And I just got today in listening to L.G. Aristo when he was talking about all the trauma that he's experienced and how these things started happening in conjunction with the trauma. And I would say that the thing to add here to that sensitivity is vulnerability. And when you just said, Nick Haynes, about vulnerable love, I think that's absolutely true. And I think people, experiencers who are more vulnerable, they're more willing to be vulnerable. And vulnerable just means open. You know, so if we're more emotionally vulnerable, then we're typically more open. So when you add that to sensitivity, being wired more as someone who's more sensitive, I think that's what gives rise to being able to rent the veil, so to speak, or to experiencing these things that are interdimensional, is being open and vulnerable to that. And suffering certainly makes us more vulnerable. That's for sure. And I know I've had a lot of experiences after trauma and because of trauma, I think. So, you know, I noticed that in myself, and I also realized that people who are more vulnerable a lot, you've had a lot of suffering, then there can be fear comes from that vulnerability, and so then the walls go up, and then you know, it takes something to break that down again. So I just think that the more we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable and open, the more we can invite these experiences, or at least you know, accept these experiences as part of ourselves and part of what we're doing, and also help us connect with each other in a more real way, so that then we support one another as well as ourselves and the planet and the whole picture, everything that's going on, all of this shifting that's happening. We can certainly, you know, work to be more vulnerable to it.
Beautiful, Candace. Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left. So anybody want to sort of jump in and...
I got a question for you, Grant. I'm jumping right in.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
You know, I watched your Stanton Freeman interviews, and I was interested in that one chart on metamaterial.
Yeah.
I've been following the 1947 Murray Island incident.
Yes.
That the 6 UFOs that had that donut hole opening at the bottom that were dropping metamaterials. Well, Stanton's chart that you showed was basically the stuff, the lava-like stuff that fell from the craft that was real heavy and hit the man in the left arm and hit the dog on the head and killed the dog.
Yeah.
But there was another aspect of that phenomenon that took place that was this flimsy, almost sheets-like stuff of what they thought was they picked it up was very light metal, like aluminum foil or something. And I was wondering, are you familiar with that part of it?
I've heard it, but all that material seemed to sort of evaporate. You remember the Air Force went in there to grab it, and then they had the plane going out, and it sort of crashed. And so that sort of, I talked to the one professor in Washington who supposedly analyzed material, and he was saying it was lava, and I'm saying, seriously, like, can you give me the results, and where's the piece that you have? All that stuff seems to sort of disappear. My interest in the whole metamaterial thing is, especially with, you're talking about Maury Island, and the one in Brazil is the same thing, where the object sort of plays this thing like it's a bird with a broken wing, and it's about to crash, and everybody gets everybody's attention, and then it shoots out this material. And what interests me is that I think most of the people that are working on it are thinking it's some sort of part of a flying saucer, and if we can back engineer this piece of metal and figure out what it is, we're going to build a flying saucer. And I still always think it's like some sort of thing they're just dropping to sort of play with us. And one of the rumors I've heard about the new James Fox story documentary is that they've discovered with these metamaterial things that they've actually messed around with the atom, that there's more space in the atom between the electron and the nucleus than in regular materials. So even though they may look the same on the outside, they have this bizarre structure, or they're missing isotopes and stuff like that. And to me, I think that's, again, it's this awakening thing where I can't see a flying saucer coming across the galaxy and then going to Maury Island in 1947, 3 days before the first UFO sighting, where it suddenly starts to have problems and sort of explodes and drops stuff on people. To me, it's the same sort of thing. It seems to be like the theory of wow, where it's just, they're just giving us messages, trying to wake us up and trying to get us to think.
Yeah, and I'm following that message, or trying to, but I'm looking at it, Grant, symbolically. The materials, the elements that are being dropped, what I'm looking at is trying to understand the symbolic meaning, because in alchemy, there was a tremendous use of metals. Each planet had a metal connected with it. And in the alchemy, the process of alchemy was practiced for over 2,000 years was all about the transformation of the psyche. In other words, the transformation of our soul, an aid in helping us become more conscious, in other words. And one of the things I found out that's very interesting is to track the atomic number of the elements that are being manifested. And when you get into number symbolism and track it from that symbolic point of view, these things actually have messages that are contained by the nature of the elements being dropped, how the combination of them, or the unity or the perfection of them.
Yeah.
So like aluminum has a certain meaning. I don't want to get into here for me, but it's connected to the age of Aquarius. The constellation Aquarius has 13 stars in its constellation, and the atomic number of aluminum is 13. Now, is that just a coincidence? I think not, because magnesium is also one of the metals that is being dropped, and it has an atomic number of 12, and the Capricorn in the zodiac has 12 stars in its constellation, and when you tie that in with your dreams and your visions, when metals are appearing in them, the whole thing starts to come together as some kind of a message that's all pointing in the same kind of direction. Anyway, I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, I'm a Capricorn, Gregory.
Or having metal experiences.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing to that because it's an interesting story. If you look at the invention of the periodic table, the guy was listening to an orchestra playing in the next room, and he fell asleep. And the whole thing, according to him, was based upon a musical scale that the atoms are laid down. And he actually predicted four elements that were not in the periodic table at the time. They didn't even know these things existed. And he identified the atomic number and that these things would be discovered in the future, and it turned out to be right. So here's a download where you have a connection between music and the periodic table of the elements. So that's why I think, like, where people say, well, we've got this figured out, and I'm thinking the more I look at it, the complexity of this technology and the messages and stuff like that, I don't think we even have the foggiest notion. It's so much more complex than what we think it is.
I agree.
I totally agree with you. This is an alien intelligence, and we can participate in getting educated by it because it's a psychic phenomena, and we all have the apparatus. We have a psyche that can tune into it through our dreams and our visions. So, by the way, that fellow was Russian, and he discovered the periodic table.
Yeah. One last thing I'll mention on this, and that was Dessa and I were with Jim Peniston, and you know that he got the download. So I believe we're being helped. All the people on here are getting some sort of indications and insights and stuff. So we are the carriers of the message. But Jim Peniston, as you know, touched the craft in Reynolds from Forest, and he got this download of ones and zeros. So you think, okay, it's just a download of ones and zeros, and then suddenly it becomes these 7 latitude and longitude positions on the Earth. And we were talking to Jim Peniston. He said there's an entire book coming out just on the download. It is all these inside messages.
Yeah, I followed that very much. And by the way, but Jim Peniston also says that at this time in his life, he has a heart condition, and he's convinced it was because he touched that craft.
Yeah, I'd have to talk to him, but he's going to be with the Winnipeg group. I think the Winnipeg group is going to interview him. We'll ask him about that next month. He's in Winnipeg.
But it's so central. It's so central, those Grant, because this is all about the heart. When you get down to the bottom line, it's about the union of the opposites in the heart chakra. That's what's on the table. It'd take too long to get into it here, but from everything.
That's also what Chris Bledsoe said, Grant, as you know, Chris Bledsoe, although it wasn't the heart, he said that he got a number of ailments from being too close to the ship or the orbs. And he's
touched the craft. He said, I think he told me he touched the craft when it was powered up, and he was told not to touch it. Same as Steve Boucher, who was, he's not on here, but Steve Boucher was told not to touch the craft when he went in it, and he had an injury by touching the craft as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
we'll leave it at that.
Travis Walton also, by just getting too close to it, was injured as well.
Although I see Travis Walton, I always have to bring that up. I see Travis Walton is completely different. That he has a thing where the ship zapped him, and you know, they killed him and they brought him back. And I said, I think it's just a theory of wow. They said, let's take a guy for 5 days. That'll really get people's attention. And he is still the most famous contactee experiencer in the world. Every weekend he's traveling somewhere. He's that big. And he doesn't remember anything about what happened in his experience. He remembers like 5 minutes of what happened. He's famous because he was gone for 5 days. That's why he's so famous. And that's, I think, what they're doing is these weird things. And the weirder the thing, the more it gets your attention and the more people pay attention to it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your work, Grant. As a physicist, I'm very interested in all this stuff. So
beautiful, and I appreciate everybody coming on. And if anybody's got anything, especially if somebody wants to talk, if they didn't get to talk, send a message to either myself or Desta, and we'll make sure we start with you next time we do. And we'll probably do it probably only 2 weeks because both Desta and I think, are in LA. But 3 weeks from now, we'll do another session.
Thank you, Grant.
Thanks, Grant. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
2020.
Happy New Year.
Beautiful.